But welcome everybody to Stay Curious. I'm Mark Marquette. So glad that you've joined us today. I'm broadcasting live from inside the American Space Museum studios in downtown Titusville on a pretty much Chamber of Commerce day in the nice mid 70s today, sun shining in the Sunshine State. And we hope that you're faring well wherever you're at across the fruited plain and across the world. Let us know where you're from and give us a comment or two. As man in the Streamlabs computer today is Matthew Raj, as Marty's taking a little break to be with his brother. Matthew, thank you so much for pinch hitting. You always do a good job. And he chose this beautiful sonic shot of the shuttle behind me here as our green screen, one of my favorites, probably one of yours, breaking the sound barrier, as we celebrate the 10 beautiful shuttles in the month of January. As you know, our museum feels like the torch is passed from the Apollo era that founded it over 30 years ago to the shuttle era that's going to sustain it for the next 30 years and beyond, as we are where America's space program was born in Brevard County, Florida. And if I could turn the camera around and the walls were invisible, you'd see 9 miles away the vehicle assembly building where the Artemis Orion spacecraft are stacked, ready to go out to the pad, and hopefully for a launch sometime. We're thinking uh, uh, mid March, because they got to do a wet dress rehearsal and all that stuff, and things have to fit once they get it up there to the pad. So uh, don't think it's going to happen in the early February. Mid March is when the insiders are telling me that it's going to happen. And believe you me, we are blessed and happy, a bunch of insiders. And I'm putting my phone up here so I can talk to you. Raj has got his finger on the broadcast here to get your comments. And this is going to be a very interesting program today. As always, we uh, uh, know that this is January, and January has the darkest week where the three tragedies and loss of lives of our astronauts happened. But we always love celebrating the lives of these beautiful men and women. And in our 5 years, that this will be my sixth year to talk about the tragedies as we were born out of the pandemic in March 2020. Hi to Steve Jokums there. Great to see you there at Fox Lake. And yeah, we had a little confusing email there, Steve. I believe you are right. They're building a new Artemis 2 Block 2 uh, mobile launch platform beside the VAB. But everybody loves to keep track of things, and we're so happy to have a lot of people that work out there that let us know. And there's RG Jubilee and Dean Babcock, mostly parked. Everybody, Ophelia there in France. Bonjour, young lady. And glad that everybody, Matt Thels there, Tom Celentano. Strap yourself in for a good program, and I'm going to take you back in the time machine here in just a minute. But Raj, we want to thank our sponsor today. Let's pop that up there. Where's my? Oh, there's my images there. Yeah, there we are. Hyatt Place is our sponsor today. That's our home away from home for events. Our facility's not big enough to house more than 50 people at an event, quite frankly, in our conference room. So we've used the Hyatt Place for 4 Shuttle Fests and a memorabilia show, and we love their staff and all they do. They will give you a good rate. There's a very pixelated Hyatt Place logo there. Of course, we are in Florida in the Space Coast, and the hotel's 50 miles. It's actually about 3 miles from Kennedy Space Center and 50 miles to the attractions in Orlando, as we call them, Disney and Universal. So thank you, Hyatt Place, for being our home away from home. And they're going to be hosting our 9th Space Memorabilia Show on February 7th, where you can have Jan Davis autograph one of her 2 books that she's written about her and her Air Force father. So you're going to hear a lot about that, of course, here on Stay Curious. Well, here's our billing today. 10 beautiful launches and missions featured today. And but before we do that, I wanted to just mention also today on January 7th, but in the year let's see, 1609, I believe. Raj, do you have any recollection what happened in 1609?
Not very much.
On this date in
I'm about to
history?
learn though.
Galileo turned his 8-power telescope, about like a set of binoculars, on the bright star that tonight is the brightest star in the east. You can't miss it walking the dog when it gets dark. A super bright star. That's the planet Jupiter. And Galileo discovered the moons of Jupiter on this date in 1609, which was a big deal. Heck yes, because everybody thought everything went around the Earth in what they call the Ptolemaic system, after an astronomer, Ptolemy. That existed for over 1,200 years, and Galileo's questioning this. He goes, I don't think everything goes around the Earth. I think it goes around the sun, and here's proof that other objects are going around a planet, Jupiter. And that caused him a lot of trouble. And we like talking about that on our astronomy segments of Stay Curious. And I'll probably maybe do that next week. Maybe I'll do it Friday for fun, Raj. We'll see. All right, everybody. Thank you all for jumping on board on a little bit of astronomy history. I'm likely to talk about that unexpectedly, as everybody around me knows. But how about a nice happy birthday to this really great man, Fred Gregory? Frederick Drew Gregory was born January 7th, 1941 in Washington, D.C. There he is with our friend Nick Thomas, the astronaut wrangler out at the Space Center. They've become great friends over the 20 years or so that Fred's been going out there and sharing his story. Looks like that was April last year, according to the timestamp there. Fred, of course, is in the Hall of Fame. He was a Vietnam veteran, flew 3 shuttle missions, including 2 as a commander of Department of Defense Secret Operations, 2 DoD missions. And there's a nice interview with him that our ASM friend Bart Martindale did about 4 years ago. Fred on our this YouTube channel. Just Google his name. Pilot of 51B Space Lab 3, which was in the cargo bay of the Challenger in 1985, and then he was commander of STS 33 and 44, both DoD missions. Graduated from Anacostia High School in Washington, D.C. He's an Air Force veteran, 555 combat missions, and helicopter pilot. All right. And he flew his T-38, the astronaut jet, alarmingly in low altitude during cross-country trips. All right. Paradoxically, he was later appointed NASA's administrator for safety. 19 days in space, and of course, he was one of the first 3 African Americans chosen in the astronaut corps in 1978. That's Ron McNair on the left, who lost his life in Challenger after a mission we're going to talk about the month of January. And Guy Bluford, who was in the middle, who's in his 80s and was the first African American to go to space. So happy birthday to a great guy, Fred Gregory. I have had the privilege, Raj, of sitting down and talking to this man on several occasions in depth. He's a very, very intellectual man. He, in his talk, promotes the universe and astronomy and physics as the way that we're exploring the universe is so important to what the shuttle did also with its scientific missions. So Fred Gregory, hope you're enjoying a wonderful 85th birthday. All right, let's get to the feature of the day. 10 shuttles in the month of January. Let me get my spectacles on and get you some of the tallies here. Every orbiter flew in the month of January, with Columbia flying the most with Endeavour, 3 each. Okay, let's enlarge our thing there. And Atlantis just had 1, and so did Challenger. Of course, the fateful launch of 51L. And Columbia had 3 missions, including the fateful launch of STS-107 in this month. 8 of the 10 were launched before noon. That's interesting. 2 night launches and 1 night landing at Edwards Air Force Base. You had 78 days in space total between all these 10 shuttles, Not a whole lot when you think about that's 7 days each, but those DoD missions are up and down in about 5 days. This is a month of twos, is what we call it. 2 tests of the spacesuits and techniques done on 51C and 72 by our good friend Winston Scott. We'll talk about him. 2 Mir space station missions, 4 satellite deploy missions, 2 space labs. Okay, the actually that'd be 3 because the space hab was in Columbia, and a DoD mission this year as the kind of menu that was chosen for these orbiters. All right, 5 of the missions had 7 crewmen on it. So let's look at them. A beautiful shot of the maximum Q going through the air pressure there. That happens just for about a second, so the photographer had their finger on the trigger there. And of course, as we know and already alluded to, we lost Challenger, launched in the month of January. So I'm just going to ask you right now, as part of our program today, where were you on January 28th, 1986? Can you believe it's going to be 40 years ago? And it looks to me like everybody but maybe Ophelia might be able to know exactly where they're from. Hi, George Smitty. Glad that you're there. Your uncle's having an off day today, a good vacation day. Raj, I was paying my cable bill at the Comcast or whatever it was in Bristol, Tennessee. Looked up at the TV that was up there and saw the replay over and over going on of the smoke trails of the bad explosion, and just thought, what the heck's that all about? That doesn't look right. That's where I was 40 years ago, and we're going to be celebrating the loss of these and the Apollo and Columbia later this month. So let's kick off with STS-32. I'll do a couple of the logos there at my discretion, and we'll certainly talk about several of these missions more in depth as we go through the month of January. And these are in order of the launch. January 9th was the LDEF retrieval. All right, this was the retrieval of the long-duration exposure facility that had been in space since 1986 when it was deployed. I think it was actually deployed in 1985, and because of the Challenger explosion, it couldn't be retrieved. Then Brandenstein, there is the launch of it, a beautiful launch. I'm not going to show you a whole lot of pictures of each mission, but give you a taste of what the shuttle era was all about. And I love that one. That one's punching through the cloud deck, see, taken from a T-38, where they were just following it just enough to get this picture up there. And usually astronauts took these pictures, all right? RG Jubilee says she was in New York when she saw it on TV and knew something was wrong. Dean Babcock was working at Radio Shack in Decatur, Illinois, so he probably does. Carlton Bailey's been on here and talked about it many times as he watched the explosion from the press site there, his first assignment, and Carlton's been on here many times, all right? There's the long-duration exposure facility. You can see some of the wear and tear on the colors and pieces that have folded over, been warped, so to speak, and they had a defense communications satellite to deploy, and they also had some experiments in the mid-deck. Dan Brandenstein, James Weatherby, Bonnie Dunbar, David Lowe, and Marcia Ivins were on this mission in 1990. Next up, we're going to talk a few minutes about STS-72, one of my favorite missions. Okay, let's look at this for various reasons, and none more so than our great friend and supporter of the museum, Winston Scott, was on this mission, and he became the coldest person ever exposed to outer space, Raj, as they were testing a spacesuit there. The patch depicts the orbiter Endeavour and some of the payloads on the flight. The Japanese satellite space flyer unit is shown in free-flying configuration with the solar array panels deployed there in the middle. The inner border of the patch represents the space flyer unit's distinct octagonal shape. I didn't know that. Endeavour will rendezvous with and retrieve SFU at an altitude of approximately 250 miles. The Office of Aeronautics and Space Technology flyer satellite, called the OAST, is shown just after release from the remote manipulator arm. The OAST will deploy at an altitude of 165 feet to fly free for 2 days gathering data. The payload bay contains equipment for the secondary payloads, the shuttle laser altimeter and the shuttle solar backscatter ultraviolet instrument. There were two extravehicular activities planned to test hardware for assembly on the space station and the space suits. The stars represents the crew's hometowns in the United States and Japan. So those stars are on, I see them there, on the North American continent, and then one on Japan. And I know one of those in Florida is Miami, because that's where Winston Scott grew up. And there is Winston in one of the more circulated famous EVA photos. And I have never seen this man not smiling. Okay, this guy is an amazing person. I'm happy to call him my friend, more than just a business friend. And he is really a good dude, and he has done several interviews here on Stay Curious, several of them off the cuff when he's talking to the Japan group, and we'll have him in his next visit here. This was a great crew with Brian Duffy as the commander. Let's go back here. Brian Duffy's the commander. Brett Jett is the pilot. What a name for a pilot, huh, Jett? Leo Chow and Winston Scott did EVAs. Also, the other Japanese astronaut on there was Koichi Wakata, who they nicknamed the Man. Okay, he's really a character. And Dan Barry. All right, and I love talking about Dan Barry. I love me some Dan Barry because I'd love to meet this guy. There's the crew there. I should have been announcing that. That's Koichi, the Man, there on the left. Dan Barry's third from left. Of course, Winston on the left. Hall of Fame recipient Brian Duffy's the commander. Next to him is Brent Jett, and then on the far right is Leroy Chow. All right. Now, and this is up at way at the top on the gantry up there. You see how high they are, 300 some feet tall. The entire shuttle was 284 feet for the shuttle stack complete. Okay, the orbiter is 122 feet by 78. Dan Barry, if you're a fan of the show, was on the Survivor program, and he was one of the quarterfinalists on there. And I watched a little bit of that when that was going on. I forget what year that was. And there Dan is on a spacewalk. Okay. I don't think he spacewalked on this mission, though. But he's really a MacGyver type of guy in space, if you know what I mean. A fix-it guy that can pragmatically look at anything and see it in a different way. And then, of course, I know Winston from playing his trumpet. He actually went on a music scholarship to Florida State up in Gainesville, and that's quite a story that he tells. He is an outstanding trumpet player. He thought that's what he would be, a jazz musician or something like that in his life. He joined the Navy ROTC, and the rest is history. But Winston plays jazz the second Tuesday of the month at the Italian American Club in Melbourne. He's part of a 13 to 16 piece group that Joel's Jazz Cats, and they have everyone from high school kids, college kids, to a bunch of baby boomers still blowing the horn like Winston there. So God bless you, Winston. I always love talking an excuse to talk about you. This is one of the more influential astronauts in the community. Of course, he's getting in his 70s, and he and his beautiful wife Marilyn are are picking and choosing more what they want to do. But I have seen pictures of him on the stage 20 years ago at an American Space Museum function, and I remind him constantly that we love you and we would not be where we are without Winston Scott. So, uh, see a couple other people that have mentioned where they were. Uh, yep, Cliff Watson cried like a lot of us. Steve Jokums was at work at Team Peoria. Don't like to remember it. And I don't either, Steve. That's why we don't like showing the pictures of the tragedies, that sort of stuff, dwelling on it outside just the basic stuff. Millions of words have been written about it. We know what went wrong with both of them. Let's honor the people that lost their lives for the families, is what I say. So, all right. Next up, our third shuttle of the month of January is STS 61C. All right. This was a mission commanded by Robert Gibson, Hoot Gibson. Let's see if I got a picture. There we are. There's Hoot Gibson on the right. His pilot is Charlie Bolden. Okay, on the left. And in the middle there, I see, looks like Steve Hawley, and George Pinky Nelson would have been there, Franklin Chang Diaz, Robert Senker, and Congressman Bill Nelson. All right. This was launched on January 12th, 1986. This was the last successful launch before the Challenger disaster. 61C. The mission was to deploy some hardware, a satellite. All right, they had 4 delays on there, and they had Congressman Bill Nelson on board. Don't have a picture of him there. I probably should have grabbed one for that. But he had 2 Nelsons, Pinky George Nelson and Congressman Bill Nelson. Bob Senker, this was his one and done mission. We see Bob a couple times a year out there at the Space Center sharing his story. He was a material science guy, and of course Gibson and Bolden on this. You forget about Gibson being the commander of the last flight, launched January 12th, 1986, for 6 days in space. That was also the Comet Halley fever was growing, as Comet Halley was in March 86 closest to the Earth. And that's not how we fly to space today, in coveralls and a go-kart helmet, if you will. That wouldn't even qualify for a helmet from NASCAR. Okay. But Bob Senker, when I asked him about the helmets, he said they were mostly designed to keep the noise out, not protect their heads, because of the tremendous noise of those solid rocket boosters launching after the SRBs ignite. So I found that interesting. Again, there was our first 3 up there in space, and then you got the V shape there. All right, for STS-81. And let's look up that. Why is that in a V shape, anybody? I'm going to tell you here just a second from our book. And of course, I don't mark these ahead of time or anything, Raj. That'd be too simple to do things like that. Where is 81? They start getting out of sequence then. All right, there's 75, 76, 86, 87, 89, 90. Is 81 that far out of place? Huh. I can't find it. That is weird. 39, 83. Bear with me here on this live show. STS-81 is the 5th shuttle Mir docking mission. The patch is shaped to represent the Roman numeral 5. Okay, for the 5th docking. And I forgot about that. That's why that's shaped like that. The Space Shuttle Atlantis, orbital vehicle tail number 104, is launching toward a rendezvous with the Russian space station Mir, which is silhouetted in the background. Atlantis and the STS-81 crew will spend several days docked to Mir. Scientific experiments and logistics will be transferred between Atlantis and Mir. The U.S. and Russian flags are depicted along with the names of the Space Shuttle crew members, which is our buddy Mike Baker, who will be at Shuttle Fest 5 and talk about this mission. Brett Jett, again, his second flight in January is the pilot. This is in 1997. Jett went to space in 19. Let me get that right. He went to space in 96. So January 96, and then he's back in space in 97, a year later. Wow, that's pretty quick. Some astronauts are like that. I like pointing that out. You got John Grunsfeld on board, Marcia Ivins, her second flight in January, Peter Wissoff, and Jerry Lininger. Okay. And Lininger was dropped off at the Mir Space Station, I believe. No, Blaha. Wait. Yeah, Blaha went up. And I'm wondering if Blaha was brought back on that mission. Some of you might know that. I get a little confused. There is again, now they went from, and this is 1997, so they got the pumpkin suits on. That's Bakes over on the right, Jett on the left. I recognize Grunsfeld on the left. That's Marcia Ivins. This is, of course, a testing thing. That's Marcia, and that's probably Peter Wissoff over there. Yeah, that is him on the far left. Not in the picture is Lininger, who was on the Mir space station, I thought. So, or they were taking him there. There they all are together with the Russian counterparts in the Mir. All right. The two Russians on the far right. Hi, Dave Stangy. And hello there, Jackie, a.k.a. Chris Callie. Marty's not here today. We've got Raj sitting in there. Marty's okay, Chris. He's just taking a day off. All right, let's go to the fifth one here. This was John Casper, commander. Don McMongle was the pilot. Have I got a picture of them? No, I don't, to show that. Mario Runco, Gregory Harbaugh, and Susan Helms on this mission, okay? They deployed a tracking data relay station one day into the mission. They had other space probes in there. Runco and Harbaugh spent nearly 5 hours in the cargo bay doing a series of spacewalks designed to increase our knowledge in 1993 about the spacesuits and how to build the International Space Station. But then again, they risked these 5 lives to deploy a tracking data relay satellite. All right, and the bold American flag there, the bold. You'd think this was a Department of Defense mission there. I'm going to look this one up real quick. 54. The American bald eagle soaring above Earth is emblematic of the Space Shuttle endeavor and service to the United States and the world. And it's clutching a 8-point star in its talons, okay? And is placing this larger star among a constellation of 4 others, representing the placement of the 5th tracking data relay satellite into orbit among the 4 already in service. Now, this was the communication systems to the ground from spacecraft, even from Mars and orbiting the moon, as well as now today the International Space Station. The depiction of Earth showing our home continent of North America is an expression of the crew's and NASA's intention that the medical and scientific experiments conducted on board would be for the benefit of mankind. So we go in mankind in everything we do, and that's with the American way. 6 days in space for these astronauts, deploying this space station, or this space communication satellite right there. The panels at the top deploy out, and the top is another umbrella type of communications dish in space. Then we have the 6th launch in the month on January 16th on a 16-day mission was STS-107, which was technically the microgravity research mission of Space HAB not to be confused with lab. Okay. And we'll talk more with some of our guests about the horrible Columbia tragedy. We've talked a lot about it over the years. Uh, and what we want to remember is the crew of Rick Husband and Willie McCool as pilot, Mike Anderson, Kalpana Chawla, whose nickname is KC, David Brown, who was the Navy Doctor of the Year. Here they are, as we're looking at them there. Elon Ramon, the Israel's still only astronaut, is on the left there. David Brown's behind Elon. There you see KC in the front. Mike Anderson in the back, his second flight. The beautiful Laurel Clark there. Holding the bag in his hand, there's the commander, Rick Husband. And then Willie McCool, the rookie, on there. Laurel and Willie were rookies on this flight, as well as Elon Ramon. It was a 10:39 a.m. launch, and during that launch, something bad happened to knock a hole into the reinforced carbon edge of the left wing, and of course the rest is history. And I say, if you want to know and understand what it means to the space workers and the surviving astronauts of their brethren, read this book by Mike Leinbach, Bringing Columbia Home, okay, with our friend Jonathan Ward, the co-author, and I got a stack of them right here at my foot here that we give away that Mike and Jonathan have autographed for us. But this is the one to read from the launch director who launched the mission, okay, and he led the team to just not bring the remains of the astronauts home, but also the eighth member of this fabulous crew, the orbiter itself, 102, OV-102. There is the Space Hab from the mission in there. It was a successful scientific mission accomplished except for the landing. All the data in 2003 was, of course, transferred down through a tracking data relay satellite, maybe the one deployed in the previous mission years earlier on 2003. And I certainly remember watching cartoons with my young daughter and seeing interrupted as I'm channel surfing the streak across the sky that Saturday morning over Texas and South Louisiana. So we love this crew, beautiful people. I am affected by some of the people that knew these who lost their lives. Okay, I'm affected by their sentiment, their stories, and they're always anxious to honor their teammates up there. If you worked on the shuttle, you were a teammate with this crew, and as well as the 51L crew, because they interacted with you maybe. If not, your job was important to them, and there they are floating in space in a beautiful, beautiful picture. Let's move on to the seventh shuttle. The beautiful month of January was 42. It was a International Microgravity Lab, is what IML stands for. This was the first one, making its first flight in the Space Lab module. The international crew was divided into two teams for around the clock there. And let's see who I got there. I got a picture. Didn't want to bore you with a lot of pictures and wanted to get through this pretty quickly. But there they are inside the microgravity lab in the payload bay of the shuttle. Astronaut Ron Grabe was the commander. Pilot was Steve Oswald. Norm Thagard was on this mission, and Norm's going to be our featured Saturday speaker at Shuttle Fest, as he's going to tell us about NASA at Star City as the first person to fly on the Mir Space Station. David Hilmers, recently inducted in the Hall of Fame, was on this. Bill Reedy. Roberta Bondar. Roberta Bondar was the first Canadian woman to go to space, okay? She's a professional photographer, outdoor photographer now. And Ulf Merbold. And Ulf was in space 4 or 5 times. I'm looking, that's Roberta's back to us, I can tell by her hair. But there they are working away in zero G on all their experiments they trained so hard for. The 8th of 10 missions of our shuttles is 89. All right. This was the 8th mirror docking. All right. And since we saw the patch for the 5th, have you got any inkling of what this subliminal patch might mean? Terry Wilcutt, another great friend of our autograph hounds out there. Terry's not made it to the museum yet. He was the pilot. Joe Edwards was Terry was the commander. Joe Edwards was the pilot, and I'm very unfamiliar with him as an astronaut. Bonnie Dunbar, again, another trip to space in January. This was Michael Anderson's first trip to space in his second launch, of course, with Columbia. James Riley, all right, was there. A Russian, Sharapov, and Andrew Thomas, the Australian native who became an Americanized citizen, were on this. Let's look at 89 here in its patch world. 89. The link between the U.S. and Russia is represented by Endeavour and Mir orbiting above the Bering Strait between Siberia and Alaska. Didn't catch that little Easter egg hidden there. Success of the joint mission is depicted by the rising sun. A shadowed ISS rising with the sun represents the future program for which the Shuttle Mir missions are prototypes. The outline of the number 8 represents the 8th shuttle docking mission there, the loop-de-loop 8s in the middle there in white. 9 stars represent 9 joint missions to be flown, and with the number 8 reflect the mission number. The 9 stars also symbolize the children of the crew members. Didn't know that. Along the rim of the crew members' names and returning upward and onward. So Wolf and as part of that. Oh, Wolf was coming back, and they dropped off Andy Thomas, is what it is. There, and the Russian up there. The crew names and returning and upgoing crew members, so that's why they're divided there. And the Russian name is in Cyrillic, okay, and red, white, and blue reflect the U.S. and Russian flags. Artist Mark Pestana designed this patch, all right. And from this mission in 1998 that we certainly will talk about at Shuttlefest, maybe Shuttlefest 6 because Wilcutt can't come to this one, but he's pretty much wants to come to Shuttlefest 7. All right, yep, or 6, I mean. We're getting them lined up ahead, guys. But this iconic photo is one that I just love, Raj. This is one of my favorite shuttle photos and space photos of all time. That is the Mir, looking somewhat organized there. All right. All right, let's move on from that flight to a defense mission, the 9th shuttle mission of the month, and that is STS-51C. This is the one L. Onizuka flew. You've got Tom Mattingly, T.K. Mattingly, who went to the moon, orbiting Apollo 16. Okay. Was part of this top secret defense mission. Lawrence Shriver was the pilot, L. Onizuka, James Buckley, and Gary Payton on this mission. And there's L and Lawrence Shriver in a photo that they could release. On these DoD missions, they're very fussy. They do not show too many pictures inside. They're afraid it might give away what the top secret payload was. But by the time they got back to Earth, all the magazines, including the eludes me, the one that Colcom edited there, Space Aviation Week and Space Technology, that one. They would already know what the top secret payload was before they came back. Though STS-3, I think, had a military payload that they wanted to classify and later released on there. So that's all we know about that. And to end our program today, the 10th launch in January was 51L. Okay. And again, the 5 means fiscal year 1985. The 1 means launched from Kennedy Space Center. If it was 2, it'd have been Vandenberg, which never happened. And the L was A, B, C, D, E, F in the chronological stacking of the shuttle manifests in 1985. Though those numbers themselves became arbitrary. They didn't have L would be what? 10, 11 shuttle launches. No, the most we ever did was 9 in a year. The patch, and we might as well do that patch. I'm pretty sure a lot of you know the 51L patch. There were 13 missions that had this kind of configuration. The 41 was fiscal year 41, though fiscal year 85 is launched in 86. Yep, the fiscal years went from October to October, is why it's that way. And let's get to the last time that they did it this. As you know, 61C was launched before 51L. All right. This was the 25th mission. The crew members designed this patch, which represents their participation on NASA's mission aboard Challenger, depicted launching from Florida and soaring into space to carry out a variety of goals. Among the prescribed duties of the 5 astronauts and 2 payload specialists was observation and photography of Halley's Comet, which is backdropped against the U.S. flag in the insignia. Surnames of the crew members encircle the scene, with the payload specialist being recognized below. The surname of the first teacher in space, Sharon Krista C. McCullough, is followed by a symbolic apple as the first teacher in space, and we all know about that. Dick Scobie, his second flight to space. Michael Smith was a rookie. Onizuka 2, McNair 2, and the rest rookies. And Gregory Jarvis was a payload specialist, much like Charlie Walker, that our friend that took an electrophoresis machine up to space and operated it 3 times in 18 months because nobody else wanted to do it, and astronaut-wise. So Jarvis was a company astronaut trained. He was not a class astronaut chosen. He was integrated later into the mission to fly an experiment up there for a company. He was bumped twice by 2 politicians. First one, Jake Garn, then Bill Nelson. So, as fate would have it. So, we'll talk more about these wonderful people and some of the things that they represent as we go along on this mission. But there they are there. I should have shown that picture while we were getting their names off of there. Judy Resnick, didn't talk about Judy Resnick with the beautiful black hair from Cleveland. So smart. A School of Juilliard pianist is where they thought she was going to end up. She got a perfect score on her ACT test. Okay. The first woman in 6 years, I think, to get a perfect score. Imagine that. You're in high school, your ACT test or your college entrance exam type of brainiac entrance number, and she aced it. I mean, I missed 2 or 3. I mean, like 20 or 30 for me probably. And there's to the right is teacher in space second finalist astronaut, and we my name for I'm trying to. She wants to come to the museum and come to Shuttle Fest. Okay, on there. Somebody give me her name real quick. I'm at a loss here. I keep thinking Bonnie Dunbar. It's not Bonnie Dunbar. It's on the right. Teacher in space. Actually, she became a class crew member there. So there's Onizuka, McNair. What I love is look at the TV on the top up there. Who is on the right hand there, Steve Jokums? Barbara Morgan. Thank you, sir. I knew you'd know that. Barbara Morgan. She would know me to look at me, and I'd have to be stuttering in my old age. What's your name? She wants to come to Shuttle Fest big time, and she brings with her a lot of good people on there. Chalkboard on the back. Look at that portable TV and those lockers. This doesn't look so space age and NASA to me, does it, Raj? And that's what I love about these pictures, is that they're going over something that's on the table there. It's some basic training of how to use a camera, maybe, or a food bag, or something like that. And the world will be remembering 40 years ago. 40 years ago. I don't even like looking at the famous picture on the right. But, this doesn't go away, all right? And it never will go away, and we don't ever want to go away, all right? And this was the problem right there. Icicles at the pad the morning of the launch, all right? And there weren't a whole lot of pictures you can find online like this. We've got more of them in here. But you know what? People to this day still want to share where they were when this happened, okay? And I got a phone call last night, Raj, going into my driveway at about 8 o'clock at night here. I got a phone call that was from a person that said, "You know my mom." And yes, I do know your mom. Well, this guy called me from Milwaukee, Wisconsin, and he says, "I have the original negatives of that my sister took of a Challenger explosion." This is last night, sometime. And you're over that Space Museum, right? Now, yeah, yes, sir. I help around there a little bit. So, but I don't know what you're asking. Well, I want these preserved forever. These negatives need to be preserved forever. And I'm going, well, without seeing what's on the negative, I don't know if your sister was a professional photographer at the press site, or was it a backyard photo? And he tried to elaborate that they weren't a backyard photo and they would be of interest to everybody, as everybody says about their things. Raj, you're familiar with that. And I said, you may send them to me, but what I'm going to do is send them to Space 3.0. They're an archive. Scott, that runs that with the Quest magazine, might welcome those. We aren't set up to archive things, but you need to have them scanned and then put in a safe place in there. So this is a conversation I had, not to be helpful to somebody that wanted our museum to have the original negatives of somebody's photos of January 26, 1986, a little after 9 o'clock that morning. And we've got a stack of 30 newspapers behind me, at least, talking about the Challenger accident. We really don't need any more newspapers, okay? It's like when I was up at they don't have much value because there was tens of thousands of them printed, and everybody's got them up in their attic, from Kennedy assassination to Man on the Moon. The Neil Armstrong Museum joked with me. I said, "How's your memorabilia collection?" They go, "Well, we don't need any more New York Times Man landed on the moon." But yet they're worth $20 to $30 on eBay all day long because I have bought them to put on my wall in my space cave, whatever, in there. So, so I've got y'all thinking about what you were doing that day, Dave Stengy said. And we're Shuttle Fest. Kate, thank you. Steve Jokums. Actually, the 19th will be a fundraiser here at the American Space Museum. You'll want to stay at the Hilton. By the way, our room rates for about 30 rooms I'm reserving is $209. As we're looking around to find other room rates, they're over $250 and some $290. All right. We had a meeting on it yesterday, Raj, right? So, but we'll have some alternate sites for you there. So, hope that you enjoyed this look back at 10 beautiful shuttles of the month. We're going to honor the Columbia, Challenger, and Apollo 1 astronauts at Space View Park on January 25th, 2026. You can join us live on our ASM YouTube channel. And we've got the beautiful Jan Davis, who I communicated with today, anxious to come and give you all 15 or 20 minutes of her words about the loss of her friends in these tragedies. And I've gotten to know Jan a little bit. She's a very fun, happy-go-lucky, engaging person and loves the space community. She will have a reception at the museum afterwards. No autographs, but we will have Jan do autographing her book only on February 7th at our Space Memorabilia show. So Jesse's watching. My daughter Jessie. Hi there, honey. In McKinley and Macy. Hope that you're staying warm in Tennessee. Dean Babcock, thank you for watching. Tom Usiak, my friend, and your brother Mark. Hope that we have another fabulous year together. The Usiaks have their remote camera system on display in our museum. Steve Jokums, God bless you and all you stand for, brother. He has made a significant contribution from his Lake County Spaceport profits of over $800, okay? And don't have the total in front of me, but that with other things that he's contributed to us, including decals and for Shuttle Fest and patches for Shuttle Fest. The man is amazing, and you need to come to Shuttle Fest just to meet Steve Jokums. Gary Gerald will meet. You'll get to meet him because I know you're coming. Ophelia Sotero, thank you for watching. Tom Celentano, his mentions there that you all read was it hurts him to even think about these tragedies like me. Mark Thel, RG Jubilee, Mostly Parked, Kate Pye, Kate 3.14, Cliff Watson down in Pomona, Australia, George Smitty, Carlton Bailey, Dean Babcock, and the artist that we favor the most, Chris Calley, my friend and yours. I hope that you all enjoyed this look at our Challenger, Columbia, Endeavor, Atlantis, and who am I leaving out? Challenger. I said Challenger, Endeavor, and Discovery. Didn't say Discovery. All right. Here's something interesting. The final wheel stop out there of Atlantis on July 21st, 2011. All right. Nose gear down. 33 missions flown for Atlantis. This is a plaque out there at the shuttle landing strip. All right. And what every astronaut talks about and can't help but share is looking at our planet from outer space affects them more than anything they've ever had happen in their lives. There's another T-38 shot of a shuttle going up there with that thin blue line. The only border that should matter is that's what keeps humans, earthlings, on planet Earth. So until tomorrow, when we rack up another wonderful Stay Curious show, Marty will be back. I'll have Raj doing some paperwork or working on something back there, as he usually does so faithfully with Najma, our other employee, and our always faithful Anita Truex, who helps run all of the day-to-day stuff here. So on behalf of all of them, I'm Mark Marquette saying thank you for watching. Thank you for our sponsors, Hyatt Place, and all of you that support our museum. And I will see you again tomorrow to what? Bridge the space between us. Thank you.